Hi, this is Siofra Bradigan, and this is Siofra's Magic Alcove. I thought I would mix it up a little bit today and talk about our most recent paranormal investigation that we just finished. Got contacted through the internet from some people who don't live too far from where I am that were having difficulty on their property. And it took a while to arrange going out there. I don't go looking for this kind of work. The way my relationship is with the universe, I sort of wait for the universe to put something in my path and then decide whether or not I feel capable to deal with it. And I've been doing these for quite some time. I gained the ability to open up a portal between here and the other side. So I've become a rescue medium. It's one of the things that I do. And I sort of consider that my spiritual obligation. There's, of course, many of us out there, I'm sure, not the only one. So, anyway, heard about this place through word of mouth, first contacted by the woman's daughter, and then they were reluctant, weren't sure if I would be the right fit for them or not, that kind of thing. And then the person who lives there contacted me directly, and we dialogued for a while, and she checked me out and decided that she felt comfortable with me coming out there. So a few of us went out there together. There were four of us, me, my husband, and one of the members of our group, and then someone we're getting acquainted with. We went out there to see what we could feel and figure out what was going on. It's sort of hard to explain how we go about doing this, because each one of us has somewhat different gifts that we bring to the table. And so we wander through the location and don't talk to each other when we first are going through. We wandered through the property, outside and inside, and listened to the stories that the people who live there had to tell. And in the process, found some things to take care of. So one of the things that happened in this particular location is a woman died in the house, and it seemed pretty clear. Me and the other member of the group, when we went into the room where she passed, we could hear sounds of a woman crying, and it was clear that she was still there, at least something of her was still there. And so one of the things I like to do when I find that kind of situation is to help them get over to the other side where they belong. And my approach to this is non-confrontational for the most part. I haven't really had to be aggressive about any of these kind of parts when there's an actual human spirit left over from a death. Since I can open up the portal to the other side, it's the first thing I do, and then I called forth the people that she was expecting to see. In her case, her own mother was there on the other side. And I usually actually see what they're going to, which I find fascinating, because each time I do this, I see something different. This case, it was like a lake, some grass, some trees, and her mother. That was pretty much the extent of what I saw when she was seeing what was going on the other side. And she was definitely ready to go. And for me, this is like, if a human spirit is stuck on this side, then that means that their progress, whatever that is supposed to be, is sort of stopped temporarily, because that part of them can't continue on, it can't process, it can't finish whatever it is that it needs to do to either incarnate again or go to another plane of existence, whatever happens. And I think it's probably different for everybody. So we helped her cross over first, and that immediately changed the energy in the room, which is one of those signs that we look for. I had some selenite and celestite and aragonite with me that I put on the they had a bureau there, so I put that on the bureau after I was done, just to kind of keep the energy going along in that direction while we went through the rest of the house. And in the other side of the house, there was this extreme dark energy in their bathroom. And bathrooms are, without the light on, they tend to be fairly dark to start with. And I've encountered a number of shadow people, for want of a better term, in these locations, and I think they gravitate towards the bathroom because there's no windows, maybe. And that doesn't mean they can't wander around the rest of the house. And the people who live there reported seeing a shadow out of the corner of their eye in the evening that would just sort of pop in and out. They could never see it directly, which is pretty common for that kind of phenomenon. And one of the ways I test that too, if I go into a bathroom like that, I turn off the light and then I have the door open a little bit so that some light from the other part of the house comes in, and then wait and see what happens. And if the darkness doesn't dissipate, like when you start to, your eyes start to adjust and you start to see things better in dim light, that's the normal way things are supposed to go. And if it doesn't do that and it suddenly gets darker, that's pretty good indication that there's some kind of energy force in there that's blocking the light. And I've made a tool, which I'll show on another video when we talk about some of our tools, a banishing wand that I created that sucks that kind of dark force into it and keeps it trapped. And I keep it in there for several days, and then after it's finished with absorbing it all, and then I take it off of my property and I put it back into the earth and let the earth absorb that energy so it goes back to do something more productive with it. So I have specific things that I've created to help me with this kind of work, and that's one of them. Then there was, in this house, one of the things I've uncovered in a number of homes, not all of them, but a number of them, the natural ley lines that go around the planet. I'm sure you've heard about those and what they are. They're sort of like the nervous system of the human body, where you have impulses going from the brain to the external and coming back, the electrical energy that passes through your body. Sort of what the earth has for itself, where these conduits of energy travel in different directions and bring energy from one place to another. So, it's not that they don't belong there, in that they're, the whole planet's covered with them, but the chances apparently of someone building a house on top of one of them, because there's more and more people around, is becoming more and more a problem. Because people living in the stream of energy going through their house, it's sort of disruptive to your own magnetic field and your own energy, and can make people feel a little bit uneasy, uncomfortable, spaced out, not grounded. There's been a couple of cases where people have, it sort of feels like they're walking in water, or walking somewhere in the middle of the air without anything under them. And so I've developed a technique to help reroute the ley lines. And I have found that obsidian, petrified wood, or black tourmaline works really well to pull the ley line energy down into the ground, so it goes down deeper. And then I use jade to pull the energy back up. So what I do is I create like an island for the house to be on. In this case, the energy was coming at an angle through the kitchen, going through the entire house, and then leaving at another angle. And I sense what direction the flow is by standing in it, and I just close my eyes and wait, and the energy will push my body. So like I stood in the kitchen and felt a push in one direction. I stood in the other room where I thought it was, and it was pushing the same direction. So I got an idea of, it's starting over here, it's ending over here. So there's always two of us that have to deal with this, because you don't want to take too long to shift the energy completely. So one of us puts in this case, a black tourmaline at one end, so the energy starts going down, and then the other one of us, in this case me, buried a piece of jade at the other end, so then the energy would come back up. And then we went back in the house and checked, and sure enough, that flow that was pushing us around was gone. So made them a little island. obviously you can't like banish a ley line, that would be silly. So that was something that was fairly easy for us to address. So those were three fairly common and fairly big things in the house: the shadow person, the ghost, and the ley line. After we talked later, one of the other members of the household came and told us some of the things that had happened to him when he was in the bathroom, which we didn't know about. And apparently he was in there taking a bath, and suddenly something sat on his chest and held him down, and he couldn't move, and he was having a hard time breathing, and he was incredibly frightened and yelling for help. So hopefully that won't happen again, because that's not a comfortable environment for people to be in. So that was inside the house. When we checked outside on the property, as we did our investigation, we found several other things that were going on. And this one was unusual in the fact that some people who had lived on this property before these people had moved in apparently thought it was a great idea to steal statuary from the local cemetery, which was like right across the street, and use it as yard decorations. This is not, generally speaking, considered a good idea. Like desecrating a grave, robbing a cemetery, and using their statues. And so, we knew that had happened, so we were looking around, and everybody was gravitated towards this one statue it was a young boy statue. And it definitely felt like it didn't belong. It wasn't supposed to be there. And we really didn't think there was anything we could do about it in its location, but they needed to take it and move it off of the property and take it back to the cemetery where it probably belongs. And I'm sure that the homeowners or the people who live in the house, the renters, have done that already. And that would be the first thing I would do after I found out. I'd be like, okay, that leaves here and that goes away. So that was another thing. And they had talked about how when the sun set, there was this foreboding feeling like something was watching them and was angry, and stuff coming from outside on the property, like from the trees. And so I wanted to make sure that I found out what that was. And so when I approached that part of the property, I could feel that tension. It's a pressure kind of thing. And it became clear to me that this was a land guardian. And I think that's another thing that's becoming an issue. In old times, when tribal communities would be moving from one location to another, or even settling in a certain place, they would have a relationship with the spirits of that place, and they would know who they were, what they were, that they belonged, and that kind of thing. So they would leave offerings for the guardians of the land in different locations, and those spirit beings, even though they predate people, come to expect that kind of acknowledgement, I think, because they're used to having at this point a relationship with the people that live there. And so when people who don't have that kind of sensibility or don't understand that particular tradition and have never encountered anything like that before move into an area and they sense something, they can feel that there's something there, but they don't know what it is, they're usually afraid of it. And that has a backlash kind of an effect. So for me, I've encountered two of these particular types of land guardians in my area, and this was the second one. One is actually in my neighborhood. And I just go and have a talk with them. I gave this one a piece of obsidian, an Apache tear kind of thing, and some sage that I had with me as an offering. And since I don't smoke, we were told at one point that tobacco wasn't an appropriate offering for us to make because it didn't mean anything to us. It wasn't connected to us. So we've started offering sage. But for someone who's a smoker, that would make sense. Someone who uses tobacco, or someone who has a lineage where that's the common thing to do, then that would make sense as well. So I just basically went over to where it was located the strongest, which was right in the corner under the trees. and acknowledged that it was there and that it belonged there, and told it a little bit about the people that lived in the house, and, said that they had not meant to be disrespectful of its presence, that they had not understood what it was, and it was their ignorance. It wasn't disrespect in that sense, and that we would honor that it was there, and they now knew that it belonged, and no one was going to try and chase it off. And so that seems to work pretty well with those. They really appreciate that acknowledgement. The one in my local area, that's like right across the street from where I live, on the other side of a larger road, actually decided to return the favor one day when someone came into my house who turned out to be a dangerous individual, which we hadn't figured out yet. And actually, this gigantic land guardian came inside my house, which I'd never had happen before, so that was sort of a surprise. And as things evolved afterwards, and this individual's true colors came out, and their lack of mental stability and whatnot became apparent, and some of their violent tendencies, I put two and two together and figured that that was actually an attempt to protect me from this person. So that was interesting. You never know what's going to happen when you're dealing with different spirit beings and stuff like that on a regular basis. So after I've already talked to the homeowners and checked in with them, or the renters, today, and everything has calmed down. So far, everything seems to be perfectly back to normal and fine and fantastic. So that was good news. Then there was another area outside where we walked into and suddenly smelled mint. To me, that tells me fairies are about. I could feel their energy. I could smell the mint. And there's no actual mint in the woods there at all. And so I told the homeowners, the renters, about that, and recommended that they, put in a little garden area back down there, like maybe a bird bath and some flowers and maybe some colored rocks and stuff like that, to encourage the fairy folk to continue to visit, because that was kind of neat. One other thing that I forgot to mention, when I go into a house where someone has died, even if I don't find a spirit or a ghost, I learned a technique from the Gitscan tribe up in northern British Columbia. One of the things that they do if someone has died in a home, because the Native Americans don't like living with ghosts. They don't want to have spirits and energy of death around them. And so they go into a home to cleanse it, and they use cedar and put it in boiling water, and they make cedar steam. And so we did that to the house at some point during our time there, and just put some cedar in a pot of boiling water and carried the water steam around. And I also went around the outside of the house. There was a spot on the ground I found that felt like something had lain there dead for a long period of time. And there are some rumors about the possibility of a child having died on the property, but no one knows for sure. But the spot felt wrong. When I stepped over it, it was like, this is a bad spot. And the only other time I felt that particular energy was on another investigation where in the past a location here in the area had been used for boxing match or wrestling matches, and the first bout, one of the contestants passed away, and they didn't want to stop the event, and they dragged his dead body over and just stuck it on the floor. And I found the place where they put his body when I went through that location. And it felt like that. So I decided, okay, so we'll just do some cedar steam over there. And I actually took some of the cedar out of the water and put it on the ground. I did that with where the statue was too, just to sort of try and keep the energy at bay until they got that thing moved. And so it's an interesting process to go through when someone is afraid of being in their own house. They clearly need help. And I feel that it's my not, well, my privilege in this case to be able to assist them so that they can enjoy the property that they're living in and on, and not be at odds with the energy that's there. So this is some of the stuff that I do on a regular basis whenever the universe decides it needs to have me doing that. And also, while we were there, one of the women who's taking care of the elderly woman who lives in the house, she'd been bitten by some insects on her leg, and then her leg had swollen up, and her doctor couldn't figure out what had happened to her leg. He couldn't find an infection or a reason for it to be swollen. So I did some energy work on her leg. I use selenite for that kind of thing a lot. I had 3 pieces of selenite throughout the house that I had going at different times to bring that positive energy in. And I highly recommend that, just to have in your own house. I have a piece that sits next to my my bed on the nightstand and brings in that light energy. Here in our temple, we have a piece hanging from the center of the ceiling up there to bring in light force and life force energy when we're doing certain rituals and chants and meditations. The tree meditation that we've shared with you is one of them, and we use that piece of selenite to help focus that life force energy that we're bringing in from above and collect it and spread it around. So there's certainly a place to use stones and things. And of course, when I go on an investigation, I'm also going to be wearing my own personal protections. So I've had my bracelets on, and I have a Tibetan prayer box that I've turned into my medicine pouch kind of thing. And inside of it, I have different stones that I've charged up for protection. And just, being aware of your energy and what you're doing and how it's feeling and all that kind of stuff. So I don't recommend that everybody just sort of jump in and do this kind of thing, because you definitely need to be clear in your own mind and your own energy field as to exactly where you stop and other things start. You can't really communicate well with spirit beings if you don't know what's you. Without that knowing of what's you, there's no knowing of what's not you. And so then things can get kind of muddy. And if you don't have good boundaries, emotional and psychic and, boundaries, then you open yourself up to getting inundated by thoughts, feelings from somewhere else, and you incorporate them into your own psyche without realizing that they're external. And then that can cause problems for you later. So staying grounded, and then after an investigation like that, eating is a good thing because it helps to ground you automatically. So that's one of the things we did, is we went and ate something to help ground us. So all in all, from arriving there, I think we arrived around 11:15 by the time we got there, and we left around 2. So we were there for several hours of intense interaction and one-on-one with the people who were there and helping them. They were worried that they were wasting our time, which is pretty common. A lot of people think, this can't really be real, I don't know why I called you. And, my response is, hey, I'm here, we can figure out if it's real or not. If it is real, we can take care of it. If it's not real, then you'll know it's okay. And so there's nothing to worry about. So calming the people down is important. And so yeah, one of the things we do. So I guess this is Siofra Bradigan, and this is Siofra's Magic Alcove, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.